was getting against me at the start, at the very least. They were not nearly as good as this one, but honestly, it's been a consistent theme in both mine and Hikaru's matches in the Speedsters Championship now for a number of years. That it's goes without saying, but it's not enough to get a good position. Like you actually have to win it as well.
Some candidates prep, right?
Yeah, this is the candidates prep, like line that Hikaru used with very, very little success against Alireza yesterday. But against other people, he's usually done fine. And yeah, there are some long lines here, and it's like as it happens as in most of these lines where Black plays a line that is supposed to be like a little bit inferior, that if you prepare it well, it usually ends up in some drawn end game, and if White wants to deviate, then you get a full-fledged fight, and that is exactly, I think, yeah, I don't think Bishop C2 was the move there, but no, yeah, now Black has gotten what he wanted from the opening, which is complicated positional struggle where he's not worse.
This pawn on d4 is just a long-term issue for White to deal with.
Yeah, it is. Black King is a little bit weaker, so you got to take that into account. So I don't necessarily think White's long-term prospects are that bad, but he's also got to deal with the pressure in the center now, and it doesn't seem super easy for him to coordinate either.
Yeah, this move like Rook C1, staring into your own bishop. You already said Bishop C2 didn't look like the most challenging variation, and it just feels like White's pieces are stepping on each other's toes a bit. I mean, there's pins in multiple directions as well, and it seems like Black is a little bit better coordinated at the moment.
Yeah, it seems that Hikaru has coordinated his pieces perfectly so far. Yeah, Rook C1, I think, mainly has the purpose of defending the bishop on C2. Now C6. C6, I'm guessing, is probably not a great move since it takes away that square from the knight. And since it's given a question mark, I'm starting to think of forcing moves. And so, like, yeah, Bishop F4 came to mind. Bishop D2, trying to go Bishop B4 also came to mind. But now, yeah, maybe things are a little bit loose for Black. So here, this was not ideal, and I think Niemann is doing the correct thing, giving up on the d4 pawn. After all, with the pawn weakness, with the pawn on f6 that has weakened the Black king, an opening of the center should be good for White, even if it's a cost of a pawn and potentially some central squares.
Yeah, this d4 pawn is actually loose, but you can't take with the queen, everyone, because you lose your bishop. And if you take with the bishop, you're walking into all sorts of pins and danger. But perhaps Hikaru's thinking about it, because I don't see an immediately winning move for White after that. So at least you have to consider snacking on a pawn in the center.
Oh, I think he's going to do it. Bishop b3 is a big positional threat for White as well. With ideas, let's say you go queen, you go rook to d8, then bishop b3. Black probably has to, well, apparently I'm an idiot and this is a bad move, but I was just going to say that, for instance, queen d7, then knight c5 at the very least is a good move. You trade off. You put the pawn on c5 where it's much better. You get the bishop on d6, and White has a definite advantage.
Seems he did move the rook, but to e8, which I know you were just...
e8, yeah. h4 is logical. Grandmasters, when they see a knight on h6, on g6 or b6, like your hand just like desperately wants to fling that flying pawn forwards to harass it. So this seems, I think both players are actually quite happy. Hikaru loves playing against these weaknesses, and Niemann also loves these sort of Italian, Spanish positions where you have little initiative for that pawn weakness.
Yeah, this pawn is a long-term problem. It seems like White is going active, as you said, and you mentioned it, and I think it's just true. Hans, he just always wants to get active, play for an initiative. He doesn't want to sit and play for little nuances and small positional threats, but he's going right forward. He wants to get that pawn going against the black king. So do you see this game with white up a minute on the clock that Hikaru, do you feel like he might be in some trouble at this stage, or do you think he's just trying to figure out, all right, what direction does this game need to turn? Is there a capture on d4 or e4 at some point? Like, what do you think he's thinking at the moment?
Yeah, I don't think he can wait. So I think he's got to capture something now. And the position is very, very, very concrete. He's definitely spending his time calculating. Like he would, I think, knowing Hikaru, I'm sure he'd love to play moves like 97 at some point in order to consolidate, but that runs into knight d6. So so he had to take concrete action. You hate giving up that bishop because you know that now. Just the bishop pair in itself, in combination with the slightly ruined black king save, is enough compensation in itself for a pawn, as well as the white piece is looking quite active. But he's probably found a concrete way in which it works for black, but it looks quite dangerous. For instance, queen f5 is a very appealing move right now, threatening h5. No, let me just show that.
Yes.
Rook e5 is an excellent response.
Wow.
And there's queen h5, and let's hope this happens. This would be absolute mayhem.
I honestly wasn't even looking at rook e5, so that's a pretty sick exchange sacrifice. You had many of those yesterday against Hans. It seems like 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, they were usually born out of necessity. Sometimes they were blunders.
Do they count as blunders if you do well after them?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Just making sure. Asking for the crowd. Oh, rook d1 is played. Okay, now white is down 2 pawns. So when you do studies, when you're training, and you get positions like this, do you tend to like this side that has more material or the activity? What, if you didn't know the evaluation, which is at the middle, which side would you take?
I'd probably slightly prefer white here, since it feels like black is risking a bit more with that than white is. It feels like if things go slightly wrong here for white, you can usually bail out to something that's drawish. But if things go wrong as black here, you just lose. So I practically speaking, I definitely prefer to be black. But it's hard to answer any of these questions without talking about concrete lines, because these positions usually hinge on like some details. But I hate the fact that for Niemann's sake that he played rook d1 and now he's tanking. So I think he must have missed something. But I'm not quite sure what it was. Maybe he's considering. He was considering queen h5 there now. I don't know.
But he throws in bishop d6, hitting the rook. I mean, Hans is down to 43 seconds, so Hikaru doing well on the clock. But as you said, this position could collapse at any moment for black because your pieces are not going to be coordinated. For example, rook f7 is clearly going to blunder something on the back rank against the... Wow.
Yeah. Okay, that looks all sorts of wrong. Okay, the refutation is probably quite simple. It's bishop f8, fe4, bishop a3.
Well, that was also his pawn's just pinned, right? So, it's not even threatening the queen.
I mean, even like bishop d6 probably wins.
Oh, but you I shouldn't have said anything. Your first instinct is usually correct.
But what did I say earlier about black's weakened king? It's very often the decisive factor in open positions. So, I mean, just rook e4 wins.
Just going right for the back rank. Is there some kind of take on f? No, the bishop takes f2.
Yeah, bishop takes f2, just king f1. And in these positions, having a couple or even 3 pawns for the exchange is usually not enough because the rooks are incredibly powerful.
That black king is just hunted, as you called exactly the direction this game was going. And this is huge for Hans because if things didn't go this way and he was trailing by 3 points, I think we would say that he's really in trouble. But he needs to convert this still. He doesn't have much time.
No, but I like this. He's forcing knight h4. He's probably going to go queen e2. And again, like we have material equality, and it's +4 for white. So that's okay. He's just going to trap the knight, but anything was winning there. Yeah, G3, King H3, game over. Last, you know, funny is the last trick to hope for some Rook D3, but even that doesn't work because white doubles on the 8th rank and checkmates. But yeah, this is agony now for Hikaru.